So, we always use the word major problem. Poverty is a major problem for many countries, right. So, Ram has a powerful computer. Nobody will say Ram has a strong computer, right. So, these two words, they always occur in that form. And then I had a brief chat with Raj. Okay. So, I could not see anything in the room, it was pitch dark inside, right. And then the crime was committed in broad daylight. We do not use wide, broad, the synonyms are wide, large, big and so on. So, we do not use wide daylight, large daylight and so on. So, these two words, they occur in the corpus not by chance, but because of the usage. Okay. So, these are the collocations. Okay. So, sometimes they do not occur together, sometimes they occur away from each other. For example, someone knocked on the front door. Okay. So, now this knocked and door could have occurred in several ways. Okay. Somebody knocked on the door, right. So, it could happen after the knocked and door, there are three in this case, three words in between. Sometimes it could be just somebody knocked the door or knocked on the door. So, the distance between the word knocked and door could be varying. So, we should be able to figure out how these two things could be picked up and how these two things occur only together in this fashion. For example, nobody will say somebody hit on the front door type, right. So, we should be able to capture these type of words as well in the corpus. Okay. So, now we found out the method of capturing words that are co-occurring together using bigrams, trigrams or n-grams. What are we going to do with that? So, why do we need those things? Are they really going to give me some additional information about the word? Yes, it is going to give us additional information about the word and its meaning. Is it going to be in the same domain of operation where I can find the similarities of the word or synonyms of those words and so on? Possible. It is also possible that it is not going to be in the same domain where the term document vector or the matrix appear. It could be in a transform domain. So, we need to identify a model that really finds the relationship between terms and document, not necessarily in the same domain that we have created it, could be in a transform domain. As you are aware, in the earlier cases and in the demos that I have shown, all the operations happen in the same domain. Okay. So, there is no transformed domain and so on. Let us talk about that or see how those domains can be transformed and how we can actually retrieve information from the transformed domain a little later. We need to identify a model that tries to put similar items closer to each other in some space or structure. Remember, we spoke about the dimensionality problem, right. So, if we have assuming that we have represented or we have named all the colors, not just red, green and blue, but million colors, we have names for all of those, and we have to make them available as part of the vocabulary. And if you are considering them as an independent entity, then we are going to have a million access for each of those colors. So, if you want to reduce the number of axes, what I was talking about earlier was, can it be created in an ESA vector or a ESA structure. For example, if color is considered as one element where we can say red is a color or color is your facet there. Okay. Green is a color, yellow is a color. That means that color facet could be put in one single axis. Again, if you consider the composition aspects of a classroom which contains blackboard, chalk piece, students, tables, chairs, maybe a projector, some TVs and so on, right. So, we should be able to write or create an axis related to those compositions. For example, the kitchen could be one axis, classroom could be one axis, okay, and so on. So, thereby you can reduce the dimensionality in some form. So, is there any other way of doing that in a different domain or in a transform domain? Yes, it is possible to really create a lower dimensional structure in a different domain. We need to find out whether those kinds of models exist or how we can really exploit those patterns in the corpus, so that we are able to reduce the dimension as well as find the meaning of the word. So, and then we also want to find out whether the word vector can be distributed in nature, or we can we create a vector that is dense in nature. You remember in the one hot vector, a word is represented by the index in that particular column. For example, if all the elements of 0 except one element which is 1, that means that particular element in that column represents that word. So, it is an index of the word in the entire vocabulary. The rest of them are 0, so we have no use of those. So, can we create, and it also one hot vector, as you remember, it does not really give you any similarity of the words. It does not really talk about other relationships with similar words. So, we want to find out whether it is possible to create a vector which is dense in nature, smaller in size, but captures the similarity of the words or synonyms or the context in which the words appear and so on. So, this is going to be the very interesting exercise that we are going to see in a short while. Okay. So, as I mentioned, these kinds of operation need not happen in the same domain as term document matrix or in the coincident matrix or binary incident matrix space. So, it can happen in a different space. Again, it is a real space, it is not very different, but it will be in a transform domain, and each and every element will not represent exactly what we saw in the previous or in the earlier domain space. Okay. So, as I mentioned in the previous slide, that our aim is to reduce the dimension and at the same time create a dense vector. What are the different ways that we can do it? So, one of the ways that we are going to be looking at is called as a latent semantic analysis or latent semantic indexing. Okay. And then we going to be in future see some neural networks which would use the skipgrams and continuous bag of words. I will mention a few lines about that in this slide. We are going to be using Brown clustering. I will talk about that later, which is a statistical algorithm for assigning words to classes based on the frequency of their co-occurrences with other words. Okay. So, these are the different mechanisms by which you can create dense vectors. In the second point where I mentioned about skipgram and CBOW, CBOW is nothing but a continuous bag of words. Remember what a bag of word is? Supposing if you have a long sentence and then a long sentence written in a strip of paper, and then you cut every word and drop it in a bag, right. And then inside the bag you have the words that belong to the entire sentence, but they are not in any order, correct. So, if you pick one, it will be any random word that you actually cut and then put it inside the bag. In the case of continuous bag of words, it is not anything at random that you pick up from the bag. It is actually 3 words or 4 words co-occur together. So, let us take one small example. In this case, I am going to use the same example that I used to define CBOW. So, let us say that we have uses surrounding words to predict the center of the words. It is nothing but a fill in the blanks. For example, if I do not have this, okay, and if this is the sentence that was used in a book, and in the question paper you are asked to fill in the blanks. If this sentence is given, uses surrounding words to dash the center of word. That means, here you will go and then write predict, and if you are familiar with this particular sentence. In this case, the context is uses surrounding words to the center of words. That is the context for the center word predict. So, this is your center word. Okay. In the case of skipgram, in the case of skipgram, you think of exactly the opposite of CBOW. The central word is given, okay. So, you need to find out the surrounding words, okay. The input for the neural network or any other natural language processing application would be predict, and the idea of that particular model is to really find out what are the words that surround the predict, okay. Should be able to give you with some probability value that skipgrams use center of words, the surrounding words should have some probability which is higher than any other random word in the vocabulary that you have. So, this is exactly the opposite of the CBOW. So, we will talk about this when we go into the details of embedding using neural networks and so on. Okay, so, why dense vectors? As I mentioned earlier, sparse vectors contain only one element in the entire 1,000,000 word vocabulary, right. So, there is only one element in the entire 1,000,000 elements of a 1 hot vector, which is not very convenient with respect to providing it as an input to any machine learning application. We also want to have more information related to the word and its similarities and how the context words are attached to that particular center word and so on. So, the dense vector should be able to provide the entire information related to the similarity of the context or the similarity of the words and things like that. So, we also want to find out additional information from the dense vector. To give you one example, let us assume two documents, automobile association and car driver, right. These two are two different documents, and we want to associate the driver with the association. How is it possible? Okay, so, you have an automobile association, you have a car driver, and I want to find out the relationship between the driver and the automobile. Assuming that we know that automobile and car are common words, then it is possible for us to associate the association and the car and the driver automatically. So, these kinds of operations are possible when you create a dense matter. This is just a simple example I thought I would provide at this point in time.